and asylum law, because of my situation, thought we can't have a situation where Edward Snowden ends up in a position like Chelsea Manning and is used as a general deterrent to other whistleblowers stepping forward. And he would have been imprisoned at any moment in Hong Kong, and would have then been sold to the world as, well, look, if you're trying to do something important as a whistleblower, your voice will be stopped, you'll be placed in prison in very adverse conditions. We wanted the opposite. We wanted a general incentive for others to step forward. Now, that's for philosophical reasons. It's because we understand the threat of mass surveillance. But it's also very understandable for institutional reasons. WikiLeaks specializes in publishing what whistleblowers reveal. And if there's a chill on sources stepping forward, that's not good for us as an institution. On the other hand, if people see, yes, it's good for sources to step forward, then there'll be more of them. On the full publication versus extremely limited publication, well, Edward Snowden hasn't really had a choice. He has had various views that have shifted over time, but he's in a position where we made sure that he had given all his documents to journalists, Glenn Greenwald principally, but also some to Guardian, before he left Hong Kong, because both Edward Snowden and I assessed that it would be a kind of a dangerous bait for him to be carrying laptops with material on it as he transited through Russia to Latin America. It might be something that would cause the Russians to hold him. So we made sure he had nothing. So actually, since the point of those initial disclosures, Edward Snowden hasn't been able to control how his publications have been used. He's been a very important voice in talking about the importance of different aspects of them, but he's had no control. The result is that more than 97% of the Snowden documents have been censored. Enormously important material censored, and why there have been some pretty good journalists working on them, and Glenn Greenwald, I think, is one of the best journalists publishing in the United States. You have to have hundreds of people working on material like this, and engineers, etc., to understand what's going on. So we have quite a different position to those media organizations that have effectively privatized that material and limited it. Now, you can't say that actually the initial publications was all the important stuff, because there have been many more publications as time goes by, even some within the past 2 months. And those publications, for example, include ways to find sites in the United States used by the National Security Agency. There's some procedures for visiting those sites. Now, if those had been released in 2013, investigative journalists and individuals could have gone to those sites before there was a cover-up. And that's true in the United States, and it's true in Europe and elsewhere. So I'm a bit sad about, in some ways, about how the impact of the Snowden archive has been minimized as a result of not having the greatest number of eyeballs. Too many people in the overall general public have the mindset, if I have nothing to hide, then I have nothing to fear in regards to privacy. This is absolutely false. I'm reading question. I mean, it's a statement, really. well, you can reverse this statement, this extremely irritating statement. I mean, when you hear people say that, you say, I mean, this is so 21st century, so you know, Generation Z. It's not about you. It's not about whether you have something to hide. It's about the whether society can function and what sort of society it is. The key actors in society who influence its political process, people who publish, publishers, journalists, MPs, civil society foundations, if they can't operate in the society, then you have an increasingly authoritarian and conformist state. Even if you're someone who thinks otherwise, you're of absolutely no interest. The result is you have to suffer the consequences of the society that has been, that has evolved. Also, you're not an island. So when you don't protect your own communications, it's not just about you. You're not communicating with yourself. You're communicating with other people, and you're exposing all those other people. And even if you assess at the moment that they're not at risk, are you sure your assessment is correct? And are you sure they're not at risk going into the future? I think the biggest problem with mass surveillance actually is that the knowledge of mass surveillance and fear about it produces intense conformity. So people start censoring their own conversations, and eventually they start censoring their own thoughts. So it's not enough to create fears about mass surveillance. One, at the same time, has to create understanding of how to avoid mass surveillance, or understanding that at the moment, most of the mass surveillance authorities, like the National Security Agency and the organs it feeds, are pretty incompetent. That can change as artificial intelligence merges with mass surveillance, where those data streams from the NSA and PRISM program are massaged by artificial intelligence. Okay, it's a question from Sam C0. And have you seen the WikiLeaks post on Twitter saying that they're thinking about making a list of every verified Twitter user, complete with full name, addresses, phone numbers? Seems a bit silly to me. Well, of course we didn't. It's a false story. WikiLeaks never posted any such thing on Twitter. The primary WikiLeaks support group, WikiLeaks Task Force, said we are thinking about creating what data points are needed to create a map of ingredients, a map of predictors to understand the relationships between people who are involved in influencing on Twitter. So verified users are influential, who influences those users. But that's a discussion question by a support group, and it explicitly stated that it was not about publishing addresses. So it's but seeing that story spread, well, why is it spreading? It's spreading because of two reasons. Number one, as a result of the efficacy of our publications, and they're damaging the ruling class in Washington and more broadly in the United States, there's a desire to reduce our reputation in the establishment press. And so those things are grabbed onto, taken out of context, and promoted. There is a second reason which is pretty interesting. And the second reason at least it's my analysis, that this is the second reason, is that there exists a two-level class hierarchy on Twitter. So people with blue ticks, people without blue ticks. There's about 230,000 with blue ticks, and they correspond to something like about 30% of those people who would consider themselves to be members of the establishment in the English-speaking countries. So those are MPs, journalists, CEOs, etc. People who are representative in some way and therefore have a need to interface with the public. So about a third of those types, in particular the younger and more upcoming ones, are on Twitter. And they have blue ticks. So you have here both an identity phenomenon, where someone is branded with identity of a blue tick, and so an identity politics emerging in this group, and also a class phenomenon. And so the recontextualization of the WikiLeaks task force discussion point into a threat against this identity group was then widely spread by that identity group and lined up fairly neatly with the politics of something like maybe 80% of that identity group. It's quite interesting. You think about this new emerging identity class. Well, it has a quality within the blue tick class. That is, you have a blue tick or you don't. And then a number of followers. And so such metrics looking at what the relationships are between those people in the blue tick identity class and exterior class dynamics, so relationships to power of various kinds, removes some part of the equalitarian nature within the blue tick identity class, which in some ways is a threat to those people who have gained the blue tick, but otherwise perceive they're not at the heights of the power in the exterior class. It's interesting. It's a bit difficult to pick. The points on these questions are changing extremely rapidly, so it's a little hard to respond to them all in order. Okay. I'm going to just go to the bottom of these questions because they're changing to scoring quite quickly. So there's a question about that I said in August that we have some information on the Republican campaign, but it's from the point of view of investigative journalists, it's pretty difficult to deal with, to compete with what Donald Trump simply what he says. So yes, we did. We received a couple of company registration extracts, and then our team looked at them, and they were already public. So it was already public information. And WikiLeaks specializes in the publication of information that's not yet public. Why release the emails in a constant trickle near the end of the campaign? If the truth is your goal, surely expressing them in a couple of batches would work. just as well. Constant drip drip over the last months of the campaign. Reek of WikiLeaks hoping to have maximum political impact in the campaign. It's an interesting question. But why the irritation? So why the irritation compared to publishing all at once? People, you can imagine, if we published all at once, would say, you deliberately made a giant bomb. You deliberately published all at once in order to have maximum political impact. Well, in WikiLeaks publications over the last 10 years, we've used a variety of publication strategies depending on the amount of material, how readily engaged the audience is, what the time frame is for publication. And what we've found is that you want to closely match the demand curve with the supply curve. So people can read a limited amount of words each day. Just think about it. There's a finite number of people, there's a finite amount of time, and there's finite reading speed. So their demand for words, even if they're 100% interested in that subject, is finite. So it's optimal to match the demand for a particular type of information with the supply of that information. If there's oversupply of information above the demand for it, then the oversupplied part is not read. And of course, we want our publications to have maximum possible readership, understanding, and our sources of all kinds want maximum possible impact. They don't want to go through these risks for their material to not be read. I have to say, on the strategy of our publication across with our US election related documents, we're pretty proud of it, actually. There was limited time, limited resources. Yes, we could have done things slightly differently if we had more money, more staff, etc. But within our resource constraints, we put together, I think, a pretty kick-ass publishing schedule designed to maximize uptake, readership, engagement, and knowledge extraction from our publications, designed deliberately to make it hard to spin what we were publishing. What do I mean by that? Well, in this particular case, we have the Democratic campaign of Hillary Clinton and her associated media allies doing everything they could to spin what we were publishing. And I know how this works. If there's knowledge that WikiLeaks is going to be publishing, say, over a month-long period, then a crisis team is set up. We've had a number of those WikiLeaks war rooms and crisis teams set up against us by different governments and companies, Bank of America to the Pentagon, the State Department. And they get ready each morning, wait for our publication, and then they try and spin it. So insofar as our publications are at all predictable, that spin can be lined up ahead of time, and those war rooms can be resourced. So we made sure that what we were going to publish was unpredictable. When we were going to publish, it was unpredictable. How much we were going to publish each day was unpredictable. That we had both a human element, looking closely at what was happening with the news and finds on Reddit and so on, and an algorithm which also introduced cryptographically secure noise into publication decisions in relation to amounts and timings, and making that decision on the fly, not a month ahead. of time with a schedule all planned out. Why? Because if we were hacked, we didn't want, in this case, our algorithm, the stochastic terminator, its programmatic output to be known in advance, because that would permit the Clinton campaign and others to attempt to counterspin our publications at each moment. And we want our publications to be as unspun as possible. Okay, so there's a question. Please address the allegations that WikiLeaks has a friendly relationship with Russia. The timeline, blah blah blah. So I've seen this rubbish again and again and again. Let's pull back and understand what's going on. WikiLeaks has published more than 10 million documents over 10 years. We have a 100% accuracy rate on authenticating our publications. Everyone in the media knows that we have a 100% accuracy rate. So despite our publications affecting powerful groups which are related to the media, establishment media is in a difficult position, which is we have perfect credibility of our publications. So one has to make ad hominem attacks to try and color perception of the organization involved, and therefore color the publications, because no direct attack is possible. And so we get all sorts of ad hominem attacks about WikiLeaks, about our sources, about me. I've been called a dog torturer, a Mossad agent, a CIA agent, a Russian agent now, a pedophile recently on MSNBC, sorry, on CNN, just twice in the last week. So, yeah, attacks in relation to Russia are just one of those factors. WikiLeaks has published more than 800,000 documents that relate to Russia or Vladimir Putin. Most of those are critical. More than 2 million related to Syria, from Syria, about the Chinese documents, a lot about China, material from China, we've been banned in China, etc. So each country and its establishment tends to perceive WikiLeaks as a something that is difficult for them, and that erodes the authority of state institutions, and that's true in the United States. So yes, WikiLeaks said it was ready to drop a bombshell on Russia. Not quite. We said we have important documents pertaining to Russia. And yes, the FSB apparently was quoted as saying, well, we can electronically attack or something WikiLeaks. And then we did publish those documents. Those were the Russian-related documents in the US diplomatic cables, and they were extremely strong, speaking about Chechnya, Russian crime. A number of books were written from that, a number of calling Russia a mafia state, a number of successful lawsuits against the Russian state have made use of those documents and other documents, etc. Another common untruth that is told is the claim that I worked for RT, the Russian state TV. It's absolutely false. In 2012, we set up a production company, and our production company worked with Dartmouth Films, a UK production company, and a distributor whose name I can't, Journeyman Pictures, and 12 episodes were filmed of me interviewing people. It was called The World Tomorrow. It's the first TV thing I ever did. And we licensed that to a dozen different organizations, and RT was one of them. And RT aggressively promoted it internationally, and then people tried to twist this story into me working for RT. Question, am I in direct control, editor, author of WikiLeaks.org, WikiLeaks Twitter, WikiLeaks Task Force, etc., etc. Why the change in tone? Well, those accounts are maintained by a number of people, including me. I am the editor and publisher of WikiLeaks, so formally I have all the control, blame, and responsibility, and unearned credit for what we do. Yes, of course, if there's a difficult situation at the embassy or the internet is cut off, it changes, if you like, the amount of the speed at which I can have input into the rest of the team. So you might see a slight shift, but I have full confidence in my people. I mean, they've gone through hell and back with me. They're really tough, smart people. Incidentally, when you look at how tough they are, so when my internet was cut off here, and there's also problems with radio signals coming out of this embassy, it was a difficult time, lots of pressure, and lots of pressure on WikiLeaks itself. So that's a situation like, if you like, troops are losing their commander during the middle of a battle with bombs raining down on them. What usually happens to troops like that? Well, they'll scatter, they get scared, they go home, they get careless. But not our people. Middle of that battle, lots of political, ideological attacks, smears, having more difficult contact with me. No, we didn't even lose a single day in our publications as a result. And that comes about because of planning and because of the experience and robustness of the staff of WikiLeaks. And exterior support also, of course, keeps our spirits up. Shortly after your internet access was cut, the head moderator of /r/WikiLeaks added 6 new users to the moderation team, etc., etc. We don't know anything about who's moderating Reddit. Reddit has, as most of you will know, censored things from time to time. It's owned by Condé Nast. It is perhaps the place for the traditional media, which is owned by the traditional media, or media holding, which has the greatest freedom of expression, but Reddit is not free from censorship. We've seen that many times. On the other hand, it's fairly easy for people to constantly repost things that are being censored. Okay, so there's a question on am I alive, am I kidnapped, etc., etc. Okay, so this is the whole proof of life topic. So it's very, we saw that evolve, and it's both gratifying and a bit alarming. I'll explain why. So personally, and the rest of the team at WikiLeaks were very pleased that there was such an expression of concern about how we were doing. We expected all these attacks, and if you looked at my public statements and some of the statements tweeted by WikiLeaks in the lead up to my internet being cut off and to that difficult diplomatic situation, we were saying, you know, the attacks are going to come in, we're going to need people to defend us, we're going to basically need an army to get through this. And then the concern for how I was doing and why I wasn't being seen, etc., arose. So the answer to this proof of life question is that we're interested in something quite different. So anything that we did that claimed to be some kind of proof of life would be to set the precedent on what a reduction, what mechanism could be used to reduce concern. So the calls, for example, that I issue a PGP signed message. Okay, well, it's fine if you can understand that it's me who's issuing the PGP signed message, but a PGP signed message doesn't tell you who has issued it at all. It's just a claim message. So let's look at what kind of precedent we would be setting. We'd be setting the precedent that when there's a concern about whether one of our staff has been kidnapped, or me, that concern can be alleviated simply with the issuing of a message of text, which is coupled to a particular cryptographic key. Now, if WikiLeaks is under serious threat, then it's quite possible it might lose control over its keys. And the reality is it's quite hard to protect keys from that kind of interference. The way WikiLeaks manages its keys is to its submission keys, for example, they are not used to sign messages. But even if they did sign a message in this case, what would it be saying? It'd be setting a precedent that could be very dangerous in the future. You don't have to, if you like, produce the person and show that they're not under duress. You can either hack a WikiLeaks key or take control of infrastructure or take control of a person and then have them, or rather claim that they had produced some signed message. So we're much more interested in creating a precedent for proof of life, creating a precedent for proof of freedom from duress, or making it hard for our people to be under duress. And the best way to do that is live video. Because even if you were under duress, and there's various forms of duress that could be applied, if it's live, you've got a few seconds to put things out. You can slip in code words into what you're saying. I'm not, by the way. I'm not, but you could slip in code words into what you're saying that people, your people, could then see. Yes, I'm alive and free from duress, but I am in a very difficult situation. I have been for 6 years. Let's not think that I'm not in a difficult situation. As I explained, this embassy is surrounded by a high-tech police operation, intelligence operation. It's a really difficult situation. Haven't seen the sunlight in 4.5 years. It's a tough situation. I'm tough, but you know, you should be concerned about the situation. And what we had hoped is that those people concerned with my safety would direct their attention to those people who are responsible for the situation. That's the UK government, the US government, and the Ecuadorian government. Now, some of you did, and that's quite possibly why the internet was put back on, because of that expression of concern. But when the concern became very prominent, the result was a black PR campaign tried to infest the concern and take it off somewhere else, and largely succeeded. That was very interesting to watch and play out. What happened? Fabricated messages claiming to be from our staff were posted on 4chan, on Reddit, etc., on videos claiming to be from Anonymous. Completely fabricated. Dozens of them. And what was their intent? What were they calling for? They were calling for people to not trust WikiLeaks, to not give it leaks, and to not give it funds. I mean, it's obvious who benefits from the production of such a black PR campaign, and it should be obvious in hindsight to all those people who are trying to support me that those type of messages were deliberately intended to undermine WikiLeaks and in fact undermine my support. So just if this sort of thing happens in the future, think to yourselves, is what is claimed undermining the ability for WikiLeaks to operate, the ability for it to get new information, and the ability of it to financially support itself? And if the answer is yes, then you should be extremely skeptical about what the claim is. Okay. But we are, having seen how concern for us can be manipulated and misled, but also the degree of concern, we now have a game plan for if this kind of thing happens again, and pleasantly confident about the kind of worldwide support we can get if we get a similar type of attack again in the future. And yeah, once again, yeah, you can see that I'm speaking and maybe apparently sane, but don't reduce your concern. I am in a difficult situation. That's a reality. But the difficulty of the situation is well expressed on justiceforassange.com, the UN findings, etc. WikiLeaks itself is also, its staff are in a difficult situation, constantly spied upon, harassed, etc. So yeah, support us now. Don't wait until we are in a difficult situation that might be difficult to get out of. Make sure we're strong now, going into difficult situations as a result of what we publish. I'll just take 2 more questions. I'll try and refresh to see if anything has come up that's new. There's a question at the top about collateral murder and supercomputer time. I can't confirm or deny anything relating to our sources there. However, yes, there is a disappeared video, and that video is on the Guarani massacre. Over 80 children killed in a US airstrike in Afghanistan, and more than 100 people. Quite a serious video. And you can, if you search for Assange affidavit, you read an affidavit about how Sweden conducted an intelligence operation on September 27th, 2010 to seize 3 laptops, not the highest security laptops, backup laptops that were encrypted, but which ended up being the only copy that we had of that video. We had other copies, and they were also attacked. So that's a great, a great sadness from us that this terrible proof of a war crime has been possibly lost to history as a result of very difficult attacks on us. It's something that we're a lot less susceptible to now because we have a bigger infrastructure. Okay, I think, there's a question on the Panama Papers. So there's a claim repeated in, the usual idiots in the ruling class press that WikiLeaks said the Panama Papers had been produced by CIA, US intelligence to attack Vladimir Putin. Absolutely not. In fact, we explicitly stated that we did not believe that was so. The key journalists and newspapers who collected the Panama Papers in Germany are our publishing partners. So we knew about the story, we aggressively promoted it. However, the particular story that came out on Vladimir Putin, and which was pushed as the leading story in the Western press, rather than issues related to, say, David Cameron or Western figures coming out of the Panama Papers, was funded and produced, was funded by USAID and Soros Foundation. And they funded an organization called OOCPR, which does sometimes good work, but it is based in I think it's based in Maryland, but it focuses exclusively on negative stories about the Russia and the former Soviet states. So you have a story on Vladimir Putin produced by an organization which exclusively focuses on Russia and the former Soviet states. That's based in Maryland, that's funded, and the only funders listed by USAID and the Soros Foundation. So that is no model for integrity, and that's what we said. That some good journalism, but this is a difficulty when you have negative stories about Putin being pushed forward and funded by the US government. So we're trying to distinguish WikiLeaks' model of publication, where we're funded by our readers, not by dodgy foundations or the US government. And we don't like it when we're in competition with an organization based in Washington, D.C., funded by the US government. And readers should be able to distinguish which source is more reliable to give you the truth. One that's funded by a government attacking a figure in another government, or one that's funded by its readers and has a track record of publishing everything if it has a collection of material eventually. Okay, there's some people saying I should, because of the advances in technology in relation to video editing and audio, etc., that I should try and do something that is establishes what I'm saying now, as opposed to these questions were planted and said from some time ago. Well, I have to say, it is a little bit silly. Not in relation to us being under pressure. We have been under a lot of pressure, but we're very good at resisting pressure. But in relation to whether I'm alive or kidnapped, actually it is a bit silly. So if you look at people like John Pilger, for example, long-term friend of mine, runs my defence fund, is a famously brave investigative reporter. My lawyers, close friends, people like Laurie Love, the Ecuadorian government. If you think about the number of people who would actually have to conspire and the amount of work that would have to be done to produce these false images, there's too many. That's a social proof, and to understand that, one needs to look at the costs and understand the costs involved in trying to pull together all those people and trying to keep a lid on them and engage in all this kind of fabrication technology, which does not yet exist in a capacity, as far as anyone can tell, in a capacity to do what is done. To do all that, that's the cost. And then, but for what benefit? That's an interesting question. So in thinking about real-time proof of life, well, intellectually the most interesting one is to take the most recent block in the blockchain, in the Bitcoin blockchain, give the number and at least 8 digits or something of the hash, and then maybe to spell out this hash by sign language. That's kind of intellectually entertaining, but what is the problem with it? Well, let's see if I can get a recent hash. While it's intellectually entertaining, the problem with it is this: it's very complicated, the underlying technology, and so it has the same flaw that sophisticated voting machines have, cryptographic voting machines, which is the average person can't understand whether the security claims are in fact borne out. Now, experts might be able to, but the average person can't. And so then you're back to a social proof. Does the average person trust the expert? And then how do they know that those experts are really experts that haven't been compromised? So in fact, while it's intellectually entertaining, it's not at all a good type of proof of currency. But I'll give one anyway. So this is block 445706, and the hash is 1783748F6872728CAA92ECB49. Okay, I think I made a mistake in the block number, which is going to drive everyone crazy. So the block number 447506. See, this is how you can tell it's real time with some mistakes. Hash 1783748F687272889CAA92ECB49. Okay, intellectually entertaining. You don't actually have to read out the whole hash number. Maybe 8 digits or something combined with a block number would be enough to show currency within a 10-minute hour period, something like that. But actually, the better way to show currency is news that can be widely checked, is widely spread, and is unpredictable before it happens. The best would be, a few different natural disasters, maybe a lot of weather measurements, and hmm? uh, and are we unmuted? Uh, yeah. Otherwise you need something that's not easily predicted and which can be widely checked or was widely seen at the time. And a good example of that is sports scores. So, for example, the New Orleans Pelicans versus the NY Kicks, 110 to 96. Oklahoma 109 versus 94 Chicago. Dallas 92 versus 101 for Minnesota. Okay, so that can give you currency. In terms of any future precedent, if I disappear or someone else disappears, the answer to whether we're okay and under duress is given by two things, or should be given by two things in future. Number one, by lawyers, friends, publicly associated close friends, people who fund my defense campaign. So let's look at those. John Pilger, the Courage Foundation, people associated with it, by lawyers such as Jennifer Robinson, Margaret Ratner in the United States, Melinda Taylor, and the ability to do live interactive video where someone, even though theoretically they could be under duress, can interject in the stream quickly to say such a thing, or to, give a variety of messages in a live way, which each one is not comprehensible at the time that it is said, but the last one, if you like, provides the conceptual key to decrypt them. I'm not doing this now. I'm not doing this now. So, yeah, I very much appreciate the support. It had some good effects. I think it probably contributed significantly to restoring my internet. A lot of that well-intentioned support was waylaid by a black PR campaign, so don't let that happen again. And that's it. Thank you, Reddit. Thank you, Redditors, for spending so much time on our material. Yeah, we're really, really happy with it.